Here's something that should bother you more than it probably does. Right now, your life exists in a state of superposition, not necessarily a metaphor, physics. A quantum system exists in multiple possible states at once until something forces it to collapse into one outcome. The particle is here and there until it isn't. Now, what forces this collapse? Observation. The major cosmic events left in 2026, and there are two, and they're significant, are exactly the kind of field restructuring moments that force the collapse in your own life, whether you engage consciously or not. The question is whether you are the observer or just along for the ride. Now, by the end of this video, I'll tell you exactly what that means and give you the practices to make sure you're the observer, not the particle. Stay with me, my friends. Welcome back to Stellarium. Not a horoscope channel, but a full tradition built on the intersection of Western astrology, quantum physics, Buddhist non-attachment, and the science of identity. Now, we call the person doing the work the architect. That's you. There are four pillars, the blueprint, which is your natal chart, your astrological chart for anyone who's new. There's the field. This is the responsive quantum reality that you broadcast into. All right. Now, there's also something called the release, which is the non-attachment part, and it keeps our signals very clean. And then there's the projection, which is consciously inhabiting the desired reality before it arrives. Now, today is a field episode because major cosmic events are moments when the collective field is in unusually high flux and receptivity, what we call field intensification windows. Now, 2026 has two of real consequence left, which, if anything, makes each one worth just a little bit more. Now, the Stellarium approach is surgical. It's not anxious. What's happening? What it means, for your chart specifically, the exact practice you should be using. You do it, the field responds, we move on, right? Now let's get into it. So let's talk about the quantum physics foundation of Stellarium, if you will, all right? Now, let me explain superposition properly because most people get it wrong in a way that makes it really less useful. All right. Now, in 1927, Heisenberg, he formalized one of the most disruptive ideas, I guess, really in the history of science. A quantum system, it doesn't have a definitive state until it's measured. It exists as a probability distribution. I mean, every possible outcome present at once, each with a different weight. The act of observation collapses that wave into one outcome. This has been tested, confirmed, replicated. It is not in dispute. Now, what is a major astrological transit at, the physical level? It is a measurable change in the gravitational and electromagnetic field of our solar system. I mean, Jupiter's gravity alone shapes the asteroid belt and the orbits of smaller bodies. I mean, we are not outside that field, right? We are in it. When Jupiter shifts sign, when a total solar eclipse blocks our primary electromagnetic source, the field changes. And the field changes are precisely when probability distributions shift most dramatically, when more futures are simultaneously available than usual. I mean, this is the time to make our work count, guys, which means the quality of your observation matters more than usual. All right. Now, a muddy observer collapses the wave toward muddy outcomes, right? A clear, coherent observer collapses it toward the most aligned available reality. That's the whole philosophy in 4 sentences, guys. I mean, your observation collapses the field. Make it conscious. Choose what you want to do with your future moving forward. Now, the two events left this year, all right, I'm going to go over both in full. Event one, Jupiter into Leo in late July 2026. Jupiter is the field's expansion principle. Whenever it moves, more futures become accessible. I mean, Leo is sovereign, right? Leo is sovereign creative identity. I mean, the fifth house, the radiant self, right? When Jupiter enters Leo, the collective field intensifies around creative self expression, visibility, and the courage to be unapologetically yourself in public, baby. For the architect, the window from late July through really mid 2027 is one of the most fortunate available, really, for putting your authentic self in the world and trusting that the field is going to respond. You're not performing anymore, you're being at full voltage publicly. Jupiter spends about a year in any sign, so this exact configuration won't really reassemble for another 12-year cycle. Now, what you build into this window, it's going to compound way beyond. All right, this is just the start of something, baby. Now, the practice window really is the new moon in Leo, August 2026. I mean, guys, this is the single most powerful expansion rate window, really, of the entire year. Now, event two, the 2026 eclipses. All right. A solar eclipse in August, followed by a lunar eclipse later that month. Now, astronomically, a solar eclipse, it blocks our primary electromagnetic source, right? Now, a lunar eclipse interrupts the normal sort of sun, moon, earth relationship. Now, in stellarium terms, a solar eclipse forces a reset of the creative projection field. So, whatever identity has been running for you, the observer function gets briefly zeroed out and restarted. I mean, this is the tradition's most powerful window for intentional identity work. Not because the eclipse does the work, but because the zero state is the most accessible moment to consciously choose what restarts. I mean, a lunar eclipse does the same to the emotional field. The normal filtering drops, and what actually presents itself becomes very visible. Now, I want you to notice the sequencing here. So, the solar eclipse lands just weeks after Jupiter enters Leo. Not incidental. Whatever gets restarted in your eclipse is restarting into a field Jupiter is already expanding. The two events are stacked, not competing. So what you plant in the eclipse gets Jupiter's amplification almost immediately. Now, this is why the eclipse ceremony is the single most important practice of the year. Because what you project into an eclipse window gets amplified across the following 6 months in both directions. So, let me tell you a little bit of a story, all right? Let me tell you about a practitioner that I know, and we'll call him Marcus, although that is not his name. He's a Capricorn sun, Scorpio rising, Aquarius moon, right? Successful, I guess, really by every measure, right? Every external measure. But every 6 months, something in his professional life would just basically collapse enough to force a rebuild. Now, during an eclipse signal audit, right, the question he held in his body was always, what does your field actually believe about whether you deserve to keep what you build? The body's answer, not the mind's, was contraction, cold, high up in the chest. Now, Marcus carried a root conviction, buried in really his eighth house Scorpio Pluto aspect. That lasting success was for other people, right? He could build, but he couldn't keep things. And this wasn't conscious, right? But every 6 months or so, the field faithfully collapsed his professional life toward exactly that outcome. The eclipse wasn't causing the collapses. It was simply revealing the mechanism, right? Now, Marcus spent the eclipse, right? The eclipse window running the full eclipse ceremony on that conviction, named it, released his grip on it, rebuilded his identity script around the belief that his body could actually hold. The next 6 months, He kept what he built. Not because the field got more generous, but because the observer changed. He changed, and a changed observer collapsed the wave differently than it had in the past. This was a new identity, a new part of his identity. And that's the whole game. And it's exactly what's available again in this eclipse window, still ahead here in July and August. Now, I want to talk about how most people waste their cognitive events. Okay, they do. So here's a shadow pattern. Shadow pattern one is sort of passive consumption. People read about the event. They follow 10 astrologers, right? They consume 40 pieces of content and they feel really informed. And then they do nothing with it. Typical astrology. Guys, this is the quantum Zeno effect in reverse. I mean, a system continuously observed but never engaged never evolves. You become the most informed person in the room about a field you're not actually working with. That is spiritual entertainment, not spiritual practice. And the field can tell the difference between someone who didn't know what to do and someone who consumed 40 videos and still did nothing. Nothing collapses either way. Now, shadow pattern two is performing the practice. Some architects, right? They set up the space, they hold the stones, they say the invocation, and they feel nothing because the practice is being performed for an invisible audience instead of actually done. Genuine practice produces a somatic response. The breath changes, the chest opens or contracts. I mean, performed practice produces a narrative about having done it. If you finish an eclipse ceremony and immediately start explaining yourself, to yourself how meaningful it was, you're narrating it. You're not doing it. I mean, the body knew before the mind does. And if the mind has a complete story ready before the practice even ends, the body was not fully engaged. Now, shadow pattern three is something I like to call using cosmic events as excuses. Now, come on. Cosmic events don't cause things to happen to you. This isn't mysticism, but they shift the probability distribution of a field that was already there. Mercury in retrograde, right, made me send that email. No, it did not make you send that email. The email was already in your field. The transit it's just the detector. It's not the cause. Now, the architect who blames the sky for their outcomes, you've handed away your entire observer function. I mean, in this tradition, Stellarium, the architect is always the observer. The sky is the calendar, not the author, guys. The sky is your blueprint, man. It gives you a peek into what is best for you, what is most responsive for you. All right. This will be a 3-part sequence deployed across each event's really full field window. All right. Now, so practice one is the field reading, and you perform this 3 to 5 days before. So I want you to sit in a practice space. You can use the stones, black tourmaline in the left hand, 3 slow breaths, and then I want you to ask. And I want you to do it in the body. You're asking the body, not the mind. What does my field currently believe about the domain this event governs? So for Jupiter and Leo, I want you to ask, is my full creative expression available? Is it welcomed? Is it safe? Now, for the eclipse pairing, I want you to ask, what's the root conviction underneath what I most want to project? And then I want you to hold each question for at least 3 minutes. Notice where the sensation is in your body, whether it opens or contracts. I mean, genuine engagement produces an unexpected, often uncomfortable sensation. Now, performative engagement produces fast, articulate answers, right? If that happens, I want you to breathe. I want you to wait longer. And then finally, I want you to ask yourself a closing question. What did my body tell me that my mind wasn't already saying? And I want you to write it down. This is going to become the basis for the ceremony. And then we get to practice two, the event ceremony. And you really do this the day of, or at least within 24 hours of the events. So for the eclipses, the eclipse ceremony. And then for Jupiter, you do the expansion rite. Now, the eclipse ceremony setup, you take 4 black tourmaline stones at the corners of your practice space, clear quartz at the center, selenite wand at the front, candle lit. And again, guys, as I've said before, if you do not have to do the physical element of this, but if you watch some of my earlier videos, they will explain to you why it is important to do so. Okay, so what's the protocol? Well, read your field reading notes aloud. All right, name the root conviction specifically. The belief I have been carrying is, blank. And then I want you to run something called the sovereign release. 7 slow breaths, releasing your grip on the belief rather than trying to eliminate the belief. State the replacement in the present tense. The field I am now broadcasting from is blank. And then I want you to run the expansion rite in full, closing with the Stellarium closing statement spoken 3 times. Now, for the Jupiter ingress, run the expansion rite alone with the Jupiter into Leo theme as your sort of declared intention, right? This is a building event, so it skips the release protocol unless your signal audit revealed, real contraction. So practice 3 is a 6-month field observation. I want you to keep a field response journal. I mean, once a week for 6 months. I want you to note specific external circumstances you can honestly connect the field signal you set in the ceremony. This builds your capacity to actually perceive the field response, which is a skill, not a gift. And it compounds really the ceremony's effect through sustained observation. Closing invocation. I engage with the field at the moment of maximum receptivity. I am not a passenger in the cosmic calendar. I am the observer, and my observation shapes what collapses. I release the grip. I declare what I am building from. The blueprint is real. The field is responsive. The architect is awake. And then you're done. Now, I want to apply this a little bit more specifically to the various elemental signs. So you have fire, earth, air, and water, right? Now, for fire, which is Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, if you're new, Jupiter in Leo is a direct hit, baby. It's your home turf. I mean, your shadow, which is converting the energy into action before doing the actual internal work, launching instead of landing. I want you to do the field reading twice. Once on the excitement, once on the fear underneath it. Now, the expansion rite on the August new moon in Leo is your primary practice, guys. For Earth, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, the eclipse pairing is your event. Experienced really structurally rather than emotionally. It's a chance for you guys to rebuild the actual foundation, right? Not patch an old one. Your shadow processing the event intellectually and mistaking, understanding for actual engagement. So I want you to add a 20-minute stillness descent before the eclipse ceremony. Body first, then mind, then practice. Now, for the air signs, my favorite, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. I mean, Jupiter and Leo is your event too, baby, from a different angle, however. Expanding not just what you feel, right, free to say, but what you're willing to say as yourself. Now, your shadow is synthesizing the transit into a framework and using the framework as a substitute for the actual somatic practice. So instead, what does my body know about this that my synthesis hasn't addressed? Add an extra 10 minutes to the stillness descent before generating any narrative during the expansion rite. And finally, for my little emotional people, my water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, the eclipses are your event most directly. I mean, you feel eclipse energy more physically than any other element. But your shadow here is absorbing the collective emotional field and really mistaking it for your own personal signal. So what you need to do is run a full entanglement audit before the eclipse ceremony to really map out what's generally yours. Add some, rose quartz alongside the black tourmaline for protection and coherence together. Now, to close off today, I want to come back to where we started. Your life, it lives in what we call superposition. The wave function collapses, whether you really engage consciously or not. The cosmic events still ahead in 2026 are the moment that collapse happen at scale, guys. Superposition doesn't mean your life is undefined. It means your life is more defined by your own observation than by your circumstances. You choose. The particle isn't here or there by accident. It is where the observation collapses it. When Jupiter enters Leo, when the eclipse arrives, the field reorganizes. More futures are simultaneously available than usual. And the quality of your observation in that moment is what determines which future collapses from possibility into reality. Not fate, not luck. Your signal, your field. Marcus, he didn't change his circumstances before the eclipse. He changed his observation, what his field believed was available to him. And the field, it collapsed differently. That's the entire tradition of Stellarium in one sentence. The events are coming. The field is already in flux. The only question is whether you are the observer or the particle. The blueprint, it is real. The field, it is responsive. And the architect, they're awake. Now, if you would like to get the complete 2026 Cosmic Events Guide, full practice prescriptions, sign by sign implications, specific invocations, it's in the description. You can also pick up the practices manual, all of our practices. Well, all of the main practices in one spot with a full breakdown of how to perform these, the stones that are necessary for them, and so on and so forth. Just give me an email. Guys, if this is the kind of work that you want to do in your life, then you need to subscribe, right? Stellarium is so much more than just your pop psychology, pop astrology. All right. I think the next episode, I'm going to go ahead and go through some of the more basic rites, maybe 4 or 5 of them, so you guys have a better understanding about this for the people who can't pick up the manuals. I'll see you there.